Edward, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Last Wicket podcast. I am really excited to have you here because you've had a really incredible journey in cricket, a very variety of things on your resume. Can you start just with your journey in cricket and walk us through some of the highlights?
Yeah, no, it's great to be here, and thanks for having me. I've been a cricket fanatic since I was 3. I've got a picture of me wearing a cricket helmet with my uncle's cricket bat that my mum shows me quite often, and I've taken that love of the game throughout my whole career, really. So I studied at university sports management and law in Australia. My first big break was out of university. I got working for Cricket ACT, which is the ACT Comments, and I was an official kind of marketing media manager there. My first job out of school was at the university was cricket, so that was a bit of a sign of what was to come. And then I should say, like, my first real big break was then getting the job at the ICC, which was still quite staggering that I got that. So I was in Sydney at the time, looking for jobs. I just moved there, and I put in an application at the ICC for the Development Events Manager role. Not knowing anyone at the ICC, just thinking, I'll take a flyer, and it went through the process and got offered the job, and was off to Dubai in about 4 weeks. And this is just after Dubai and the GFC. So to go, from sunny Australia to even sunnier and hotter Dubai, I think it was in May, just as it was getting hot, was a bit of a culture shock. But I had an incredible time at the ICC. So development manager role. So what was that? So that was working with all the kind of associate members at the time, from Ireland, Afghanistan, down through to, Samoa, running what was called the World Cricket League. So effectively all the pathway events and pathway programs that the associate members did for the ICC, I was there. So I ran cricket events in Italy, Hong Kong, Botswana, Ireland, Samoa, from World Cricket League 1 to World Cricket League 8. So as a cricket guy and a guy who loved to travel, it was absolute dream come true. And that kind of, and I'm sure we'll touch upon this throughout the pod, that's where my kind of love and interest of associate cricket really started to hit home. I mean, before that, I was, obviously watched the Aussies and all the rest of it. Knew a little bit about, the islands, the Afghanistans and Netherlands of this world, but never really understood it that well. But once I got immersed in that experience, I couldn't turn back. And to this day, I'm still very passionate about associate cricket, and I truly believe it's the real big unlock that cricket still needs to do to kind of make this sport as great as it can be. And that's what I write a lot about in my Substack pieces. So that was great. Then I was fortunate enough then to move to the US, where I know you're from. So my wife was working for Emirates at the time, and she got a promotion to move to New York. And obviously I've done a couple of events with the US national team throughout the World Cricket League journey, so I knew a bit about them. But this was very early in the cricket journey in the United States, right? So I was like, what am I going to do in the US now? Now I'm in New York. Like, cricket's not a thing. There's, what am I going to do? So I applied for a couple of jobs, at some of the teams there and within sports, and it was always like this cricket thing and this college you went to in Australia. It's a pass. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to kind of rethink what I do here. So, but very fortunately, good friend of mine, Jamie Lloyd, put me in touch with a group out of an agency out of New York called Leverage Agency. Said they're kind of looking to do this Cricket All Stars concept in the US, and you're pretty much the only guy in the US at this point who understands cricket. Would you be interested? So I had a chat with the guys at Leverage Agency, and within 6 months we delivered what was the 2015 Cricket All Stars, which sadly was the one and only. So I was kind of the director of operations for that, kind of putting all the cricket related stuff together. But that was an incredible experience. We 30 odd thousand in New York City Field, about 24,000 in Houston, about 30,000 again in Dodger Stadium. It was just absolutely epic. And even as a cricket guy who'd been around some of these players, because the other thing I did at the ICC was working on the World Cups as well as kind of a venue manager to on the staffing side. So I'd been around some of these players, but when I was in that room presenting on cricket to the likes of Murali, Curtly Ambrose, Ricky Ponting, Dan Vittori, Michael Vaughan, Sachin, Virender, I was like, holy smokes, this has got to be one of the most incredible things that I've ever done in my life. And it was incredible. So after that, I've done a couple other cricket related things in the US. So I was with the CPL for a couple of years when they came to the US. 2016, 2017, I think. I was early stages with Major League Cricket, or what was then kind of the formation of kind of Major League Cricket. So writing the strategy for that in order to win the bid from USA Cricket in kind of 2018, 2019. And I also worked in some sports technology for an Australian company and an American company as well. So I was kind of doing cricket and sports tech, and that's kind of where much of kind of where my career is at now, in kind of those two fields. So moved to Denver for 10 months. After that, with an agency, then COVID hit, and we'd had a young child at that stage, and had to move back to Australia. Unfortunately, and our kind of 5-year journey in the US was over. Then have kind of restarted the cricket and sports tech thing, and currently doing a number of things. One of my major things is working with the Kingsman Group, who are one of the most successful franchises in the US. Recently acquired a Pakistan Super League team, and looking to do a whole bunch of things to help grow the game both globally and within the US with them, as well as some other kind of bits and pieces as well. So yeah, that's kind of my cricket journey. It's been pretty wild. Hasn't been linear, that's for sure.
That's quite fascinating. And the Kingsmen that you mentioned, that's the Chicago Kingsmen team. Is that the same group? Got it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's amazing. Like you mentioned your role at the ICC, and I was thinking that would be my dream job because I love travel and I love cricket. So as you said, that definitely sounded like the perfect place to start. Cricket All Stars. Funny enough, I was actually in New York. I was at Citi Field watching that game, and
wow.
yeah, probably like you hoped. I was hoping, hey, maybe this was going to bring some more interest in cricket, and maybe some non-Commonwealth folks will start following the game. Maybe it'll get introduced at a school or a college level, and then we'll see the interest pick up. But it's taken a little bit longer, but hopefully MLC and will get us there. If not in the next 2-3 years, in the next 5 to 10 years, hopefully. So, but overall, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it was a little early, but it got some great media exposure on all the big channels. But it's probably a little bit early, and MLC are doing a good job over there. Obviously, the 2024 World Cup, which was co-hosted by the US, got even more interest in it than LA 28. So again, it's never going to be overnight success with cricket in the US. I've been aware of and involved in it since kind of 2010 with my involvement in with the USA Cricket national team. And there's been bumps, bruises, and everyone who's got even a little bit of interest in USA Cricket knows the challenges that it's had. But I still think for me, cricket in the US is, for me, the biggest delta between reality and opportunity in global sport. So I'm still involved in it. Some would call me crazy, but 16 years later, I'm still heavily involved.
What did you, I guess, in all these different roles, what did you find the most challenging, and what did you enjoy the most? I'm sure the travel with ICC and all those new experiences must have been fascinating, but was it also very challenging as different cultures, different understanding, and all of that? Just trying to push the game compared to, coming from Australia where there's already so much interest for the game. So I'm sure it came with its bunch of challenges.
Yeah, I think it was that cultural element to it. I mean, again, like one tournament I'd be doing in Botswana and the next I'd be doing in Italy. And I'd be dealing with not just the cricket boards, but also the governments. So many of the governments were very, very interested in cricket and the diaspora angle or getting the kids to play. So I met many heads of state or sports ministers. So to kind of be able to be somewhat of a kind of chameleon and being able to kind of adapt and adjust to the different types of stakeholders that I was dealing with in government or the local boards or even like sponsors and other stakeholders was always a challenge, but it was one that I relished. I did a gap year when I was 18 to the UK for a year in the middle of England, knowing no one, and I think that has kind of set me up to be quite resilient in understanding how to kind of trust yourself to kind of adapt to different surroundings and different cultures. Even though it was England, it's still literally the other side of the world from Australia, and I've never been overseas before. So I think that was the biggest challenge, but again, something that I relished. Obviously, time away from home was challenging. I was probably away 3 to 4 months of the year, so that was difficult. Sometimes it was talking about cricket to, again, the stakeholders about the actual opportunity and the scale of the sport. Some of them, and I'm sure we'll touch upon a few of them, like in speaking to people in like Nepal, for example, it was quite easy. But speaking to someone in Italy, the government of Italy, was again challenging to get them to see the size and the scale and the scope of the sport. So yeah, I think that would be kind of my main takeaway. It was just kind of being able to be kind of culturally adaptable and talk about cricket with passion. Because when I was representing the ICC at these events, I was the only ICC representative there for the 3 weeks, right? So I was the face of the global game, effectively, in many of these markets. So it was quite a big responsibility, but I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely, that makes sense. And what do you, just as I said, some of the things you mentioned sound like my dream job. So selfishly, what do you think is the path if somebody wants to have a career like yours, have a chance to shape cricket, travel to all these countries and have a say in how the game grows? What do you think is the pathway that somebody young, maybe they're in their teens and they're trying to figure out what they want to do with their career? What do you recommend to them?
Yeah, like I applaud yourself and others who I think through digital media and social media and other forms of media, the best way is probably to get recognised and heard. There are not, interesting enough, many, and this is why I'm kind of writing my series to go down there. Is that there's a lot of people talking about what happened in the game, what will happen in the game, and maybe some things about governance issues that are always coming up in cricket. No one's really talking about the future of the game, and that's kind of what my articles are about, is kind of the future of cricket. There's a bit of a gap here for younger people starting out about formulating ideas about what cricket looks like them. I mean, I'm just over 40. I've been around cricket a long time. I'm pretty set in my ways, but I think a lot about the future of cricket because of my technology background and other things. But if I was kind of looking to get involved in cricket or starting my career, and I think through media, like through Substack, for example, or other forms, and thinking about what cricket means to them as a Gen Z, Gen Alpha fan, because I can't put myself in that body. I've got a 7-year-old son, and he's starting to pick up cricket and he loves it, but he's not quite there with being able to articulate himself about what the game means. So if I was saying to someone who's kind of, let's say, 15 to 22, if you've got ideas about what cricket should be or even hot takes on what happened or what will happen in your own voice, that's a really interesting way to get heard. And then there's always the traditional way, and I'll probably marry the two parts up around kind of get involved in your local club, volunteering, understanding the game. The more things on your CV in cricket, the better. And also your network is your net worth, particularly in cricket, right? So if you're actively posting or doing stuff on the media side, plus you're actively going out there and talking to people and seeing people and being involved, I think you'll see a really good kind of network effect go on there for you personally.
That's great advice. Yeah, it's always good to start young, and I think having those things in mind for people who want to have a career in cricket, because anyways, sport is such a place where opportunities are always limited, and so there's always competition. So starting young is always helpful. Now I wanted to spend majority of our time talking about, the Substack pieces that you've been writing, the series that you've mentioned. So I'll start with the Nepal growth story. And one of the things you mentioned is, even though as a country they have limited resources, one of the things that was the easiest for them is to just get the engagement, because there's so much passion there. The question that I had in my mind as I was reading that is, how do you really replicate that with an Italy or Botswana or any of the other countries that you've covered?
Yeah, I mean, that's the multi-billion-dollar question for cricket, right? Because I think, but before we get into kind of the Nepal story, I think cricket has, it's widely stated 2.5 billion fans, primarily coming out of the subcontinent and the kind of Commonwealth countries. What it hasn't really taken hold of is the vast majority of Africa, although that's coming. Europe's interesting, obviously large, diaspora, subcontinental diaspora over there now. There's some green shoots coming in South America. So if cricket can help grow these kind of, let's call them many are emerging markets, and get the balls in hand and get cricket being thought of, and probably never hit the scale of football. There's more than enough kind of talent, interest out there for cricket to be able to scale across those countries. Then we can hit, half of the world's population. And then you start getting really interesting, and I could say also North America, of course, again, Canada and US being huge markets for cricket. So if we can unlock all of those markets, which are just kind of cricket curious, or cricket's, let's say fourth, fifth, sixth sport down there, then the growth of the game and the commercial realities of the game change vastly. So back to Nepal, I mean, how do you bottle that special sauce for Nepal? I'm not sure you can. Like, it's incredible. And I'll tell a bit of an anecdote to start with. So again, my first World Cricket League event, the ICC, was in Bologna in Italy, of all places, which is actually one of my favourite places on earth. Food and wine is incredible. And Nepal was in that tournament, as well as the United States. And we started our first game, and there was about 400, 500 Nepalese fans in Italy, middle of Italy, watching their team play against, I think, the USA or Italy it was. I was like, and no one else had any travelling fans, even though Bologna is a great tourism destination. I was like, this is interesting. And then every single time I had a Nepal event, which was probably 5 or 6, there were at least 500, if not thousands of people.
Wow.
I travel all around the world. I was at the top T20 this year in Darwin, and there was about 1,000 Nepalese fans. It's just incredible. And I think the reason why is obviously exceptionally good team, and the country rallies. It's not dissimilar to India in a way. In India, their national team is incredibly successful, and the country rallies behind it every single time. Same in Nepal. For an associate nation with limited resources, they have done exceptionally well on the global stage time and time again. So it's for me, it's a bit of a kind of a national identity piece. Any Nepalese fan that I talk to, or people associated with Nepalese cricket, that's kind of the special sauce. Now, can that be replicated in other associates or emerging markets? I think it's a challenge, quite frankly. They can take elements of that. So a couple of elements to take away would be quality of talent. So the talent in Nepal cricket is exceptional. Their fielding they're probably one of the best fielding sides in the world, including full members. They've and again, despite limited resources, they've had a few charismatic individuals being involved, like Paris Kadga, who I mentioned in my articles. He was the captain when I was doing my events. Exceptionally talented cricket, but a very, very smart guy as well, and he's involved with CAN and the T20 tournament. So if you've got, I think you've got to be successful on the field. I think you've got to have some strong governance, and Nepal struggled in that. And I did mention that they've been suspended by the ICC once, but they've actually come back stronger, which actually shows anti-fragile cricket is there. But you have strong governance on good on-field performance, and then I think you've got to have some people like Paris who kind of stand above the game and get people to rally behind a few kind of personalities to say this is something that I want to be involved in, and this is something that I want to elevate our kind of national conscience.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think the one other aspect, at least in my mind, is the fact that they didn't have a strong other sport which was already capturing the general masses imagination, which I think definitely, if I think about Italy, obviously football is going to be top of everybody's mind. So there's always competition and in terms of which sport takes precedence. But I'm sure there are other countries, especially smaller ones, where other sports are not as well established, and where cricket can certainly take inspiration from Nepal.
I think, and look, and Nepal, just on that, I think Nepal also geographically next to India, and time zones, so they've been watching cricket in the Indian Premier League and things like that over a long period of time. So again, there's a bit of a special sauce there, but if we did expand that out to kind of I think Africa is super interesting. You've got South Africa doing really well on the world stage, and the SAT20 is doing really well. And Namibia is kind of following their footsteps, and then there's kind of the Ugandas of this world, and Rwandas of this world, and Nigeria's of this world. I think for me, Africa and North America are probably the ones that can unlock that.
Makes sense. The other piece from your Substack that caught my attention was, and kind of goes to your, you mentioned technologies, your other sort of niche. So the piece that you mentioned was the Great Cricket Heist, which is, and for our readers who've not had a chance to look at Eddie's Substack, we'll definitely link it in our show notes. But so you talked about how various sports are building the ecosystem in terms of analytics, the sports experience, where there's apps out there. What are some of the ideas that you've seen being implemented in other sports?
Yeah. So again, with my background on cricket and tech, these and I wrote 2 articles on cricket and tech. One was around cricket specific tech, like deep cricket tech, and one was about the Great Cricket Heist, as you mentioned, around using best in class ideas, innovation, technology from American sports and also some European sports to adapt into cricket. So what I kind of mean by that is cricket's, and I do say in my article that cricket's done a great job in one area in innovation technology. I think that's broadcast. Some of the broadcast technology, the different cameras, the different overlays, cricket is one of the leaders in that space. But when it comes to fan engagement technology, when it comes to embracing young people, data usage, I think there's a lot more to unlock there, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So let me kind of take two of those things, right? So if I focus on cricket technology, there hasn't up till recently, and probably Hawkeye and again broadcast related technology has been the outlier here, but there hasn't really been much technology built specific for cricket. So there are starting to become some really interesting businesses that are starting to build like what I'm calling kind of deep cricket tech, and I mentioned a couple of those in my article. One is Deep 22, which does kind of cricket related AI machine learning clipping tools for social data analytics. One is Stance Beam, which is sensors and data to help with your with swing speeds for feedback and kind of social sharing and things like that. So, and another is Stumpy, which is kind of an officiating software specific for cricket. So these builders are thinking that cricket's a big enough sport now to build cricket specific tech. Of course, they're thinking from a scaling perspective, and again, I work in this space. This can also be adaptable and for other sports. But let's start with cricket to start with, because cricket's a big enough sport, got big enough revenues, it's going to grow, continue to grow. So let's build specifically in cricket to enhance the cricket products, both from a fan perspective and officiating perspective, and a player perspective. So there's some really interesting companies being built there. The Great Cricket Heist, which it was one of the ones which I really enjoyed writing. Again, when I moved to the US, working cricket, I started with an Australian sports startup, which was a SaaS tool, which basically helped teams and sponsors match their contractual deliverables on a SaaS platform, on a website. I've since been involved with quite a few tech companies since then, just an advisor role, and I keep very close watch on the best happenings in the US and Europe around tech. And what I'm starting to see is a lot of these businesses in the US and Europe go, you know what, we haven't gone into. Again, they're thinking about scale. Where do they go next? Is cricket. So they've built great products for the NFL or the NBA or the Bundesliga or whatever it is, and they go, hold on, there's 2.5 billion fans over there. The IPL is ranked second in per match revenue. Why aren't we in cricket? And many of those tech companies, and I speak to quite a few of them, are like, we want to get into it. One, we don't understand the game. Two, we don't understand the stakeholders. And three, we wouldn't know where to start with selling it. So there's starting to become a shift there. Selfishly, as in from a cricket selfishly side, I'm thinking who doesn't actually need to reinvent the wheel here. We can that's what I call the heist. We can kind of steal best-in-class innovation and technology where the NFL and the NBA and the Premier League have spent years and lots of money developing best-in-class tech for their sports. We can just lift and shift that with some tweaks, some game understanding, help them with it in order to enhance the quality, again, from the fan experience, the data analytics side, even the kind of the amateur and the semi-pro side. There's a lot of stuff out there that we can kind of lift and shift, and those sports tech companies and innovation companies are actively looking at cricket. So there's a way that we can implement much of that very easily, very quickly. And I think it's going to be a great win for the sport. So it's something that I'm watching very closely and I'm really, really interested in.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting here is, and I often have this debate with friends from the US who've always grown up here and who love baseball, because baseball has ended up being such a technical sport. So recently, one of my Turkish friends who now lives in the US went to a baseball game and looked at all these numbers on the board and was completely overwhelmed. So it's become a game which is extremely solid in terms of fan engagement for the people who've been following forever, but it's also getting hard to get into for people who are a little bit older and trying to get in now. So it's like trying to find that balance so that you can create that fan, the right environment for the fan, so that if you're somebody who's really technical, been following the sport for 10 years, you can still get technical, but somebody new can still use the same app and get a different experience and make sure they make the most of their cricket outing.
Yeah. It's I think from a non-cricket perspective, or non-fan perspective. So is this cutting out a bit for you?
Yeah, it is cutting out just a little bit. And I'm going to try and put my AirPods back on. Just give me 1 second.
Yeah. I don't know if it's me or you. It might be me because my sucks.
It's better now. It's actually better now.
Websites are coming. Yeah, I think it's better now. Yeah.
Nope.
Who's Tenmo? Is that better for you or
I think
not?
it's still getting stuck. Give me 1 second.
Is that working? Or still?
I think the video definitely has a lag. I think the audio might be still okay.
Let me just give me a
Why
sec.
don't we do this? Okay.
You got me?
Yep, I can hear you. Yeah. And I
Is
think the
that
video
is
is
that better
also
to you?
finally catching up. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want me to repeat the last comment and then for you to jump back in?
Yeah, sure.
Um, so just talking about the experience, so one of the things that I often compare the cricket experience to is baseball experience here in the US. And for newbies who get into baseball late in their life, immigrants like myself, sometimes baseball can be a little bit overwhelming because you go into the stadium and although the stadium experience itself is fine, you see the scoreboard which is full of numbers and you don't know what each of these things mean. Um, so I think that that's where baseball has become a sport where the people who've been following it since childhood, it's they know exactly what they're looking for. They understand all the details. But for a newbie, it's a pretty hard sport to learn. Just the way commentary works, just the way it's scored, just the way it's televised. I think in that specific aspect, I think the stadium experience and having apps and devices which can allow you to tailor your experience, like you were saying, would be crucial because then a cricket nerd could go in and look at all these advanced stats, look at control percentages or things like that. While somebody new just wants to just understand, oh, who's the bowler, who's the batter, what are they new, or have they played 80 games, or is this their first game? So that ability to have apps would be a game changer for sure.
Yeah, and good point. That's something I discuss in the articles. I've got kind of a couple of made up people, but one is a woman or a girl called Alicia, and she's basically a baseball fan. She just came across a couple of clips of someone, Josh Butler hitting a six, and she's like, "Oh, that looks a lot of fun. They look like they're having a lot of fun. How can I find out more?" And at the moment, you're kind of just like your baseball analogy. That new fan is going in and you're trying to understand, what does LBW mean? You know, what is why six balls? Why 20 overs? What's this other 5-day test match thing? Right. A lot of the content that's out there, once there's interest, is still very much for the cricket fan. So by personalising it and bringing it back to what this theoretical girl is interested in to help them guide them through the journey to become a cricket fan is kind of lacking. There's definitely a barrier there. So if we want to expand this, 2.5 billion fans to 4 billion fans in Africa or North America, we have to kind of personalize this and lower the barrier of entry. Now, it's not easy, and I think AI will ultimately help facilitate some of that. But there are some really good tech out there that can kind of help help do that. Like you just look at, what the NFL's done with, Manning cast and, the Nickelodeon, cast as well, right? So if cricket did something like that to help, for newbies or for, 7-year-old kids like my son, to help explain what's going on in a fun, interactive way, then they feel much more comfortable rather than, I've got LBW, 6 ball overs, T20. It's all too hard. I'll go back to doing whatever else I was going to do. So we just need to, again, we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. Much of it's already done. We just need to find those solutions for it. So it's an interesting analogy.
The other topic from one of your recent articles was the sports-anchored mixed-use district, which I definitely want to dive into for a couple of reasons. One is, of course, that, from a sport perspective, that sounds great, but also just from, being a city guy and somebody who believes in walking and taking public transport versus driving everywhere and worrying about parking and all of that. That concept itself makes so much sense to me because it, you could essentially do multiple things in one go, and then in a walking neighborhood that increases your sort of the health, the healthiness of your lifestyle as well, because you're walking more, you're exploring more, and it's obviously good for the community too. So for listeners who haven't had a chance to read through your piece, can you give them a high level idea of this, and then maybe we'll do a deep dive?
Yeah, sure. So again, there's probably two elements here, and this is kind of a bit of a recurring theme here. I wrote an article a couple of weeks ago on the mature cricket market and how they can better utilise their cricket venues. And then as of yesterday, which I know this will come out a couple of days later, I wrote about how associates or emerging markets, I should say, because it does include Ireland and these ones, and how they can maximise their venues. So if I take those two pieces from a mature market perspective, so I'm talking Australia, India, England, India, Pakistan, etc. The first thing I'll say in my mind was that they're all very different. Like they've all got very different models, very different ownership models. In Australia, they're owned by kind of the MCGs and the SCG are owned by trusts. In England, they're usually owned by the counties. So very different models, right? But at the end of the day, what cricket hasn't done is kind of maximise the yield or usage for cricket venues. So in my research, I found that most cricket venues are being used maximum 10%, usually around 5% of high yield, high revenue cricket reasons. So that's a massive opportunity to be grasped. And I gave a couple of examples of what's happening in the US again, because I look at the sports business over there and always I'm thinking about how can that be adapted to cricket. And a couple of examples I made were the Battery in Atlanta, which has gone to a kind of mixed use baseball, it's not just baseball stadiums, a whole entertainment precinct, which does 365-day revenue. The Kansas City Chiefs are moving from their famous venue in Arrowhead to another facility, which is going to be a similar thing. So they've kind of disregarded all the history that's happened there and moving to another one that can kind of generate ongoing yield. And then Real Madrid, who's going to in Europe, which is going to be building an innovation and tech hub around their facility, which obviously sang to me. So my point was, let's kind of rethink how cricket can be used as not just a cricket destination, but as a holistic destination. So what does that look like in practicality? It looks like you've got, a cafe there, you've got a gym there, you've got cricket, you've got perhaps some other sports in the pavilion or indoor centre. So cricket's kind of like the cherry on top, right? There's going to be great cricket being played in these markets, whether ICC events or Test series or ODI events or bilaterals. But that's not generating the only kind of revenue and only foot traffic. Like people go there for the cricket, but they stay for everything else. So it's a really interesting kind of model that the US is and Europe to an extent is going after that cricket hasn't really executed on. So I think there's massive upside there for the game in all those markets. And then on the associate side of things, which again, I'm very passionate about and very interested in, it's like it's a different conundrum there, right? You want to have these nations having their own venues for many reasons. Number one is probably aspirational. So you asked the question about Nepal and how to associate nations do what Nepal have done. There's got to be a cricket ground there that's kind of seen, heard, and aspirational for young kids to be walking past to say, oh, there's a cricket stadium. I want to pick up cricket. I want to be like the next Paris Cadra. I want to be, the next Paul Sterling, for example. The reality is for these members is that cricket is not the biggest sport there, equitable and things like that. So, and funding and putting a cricket venue in as kind of a white elephant is not really financially feasible because, again, many of these emerging markets don't get big cricket matches. They might get a co-hosting right, like the US have got it, Ireland have got it coming up, Namibia have got it coming up. So the ICC has done a good job of starting to get this going, but they're not going to have big, ongoing, big revenue-generating events. So in that case, you need to be a little bit creative, and that's where the multi-use kind of districts really comes into play with these emerging markets, and then you start to unlock different kind of capital stacks, which I kind of just described in my recent article. So you've got ICC can put in some money if they're going to host some events, and this is what happened in Namibia recently. And Namibia as well got corporate money to kind of come in and do the naming rights, which helped. Then you've got diaspora capital. So whether it's wealthy diaspora from the US or Australia, whatever, who want to kind of give back to Nepal or a US or whatever to help the infrastructure. And then you've got institutional capital as well. And institutional capital means incentivizing institutions to invest in a multi-use sport district with cricket on top so they can actually see a return on that. And for that, you will need, again, things like cafes, gyms, other sports being played on it, like pickleball, football or whatever it is, so they actually can see a return on that. And then the final layer is, one of the big deals is the Olympic side of things. So Olympic funding, now that cricket's in the Olympics, is starting to be talked down, starting to be unlocked with some of these governments. So you've got public-private partnerships, institutionals, money, diaspora money, corporate money, government money through Olympics. I think it works. And again, it's not going to be for everyone, but I think there's a lot of emerging nations who are crying out for more cricket facilities that just haven't been able to make the numbers work until now. So looking at that kind of capital stack, I'm quite bullish on what the future holds.
Yeah, no, those are definitely some really great ideas because to your point, like even here in Chicago, I know the Cubs use their stadium even in the winter for, there's even a Chris Kindle market around Christmas. So there's always something going on there. Sometimes they'll have a movie at the stadium when, it's off season. And of course, baseball, unlike cricket, uses it for a much longer duration. There's 81 home games. So there's already, good application from that perspective. That's 25% of the year already.
Yep.
So I think that is definitely a good learning. And I think to your point, like it also helps the community around it. If there's restaurants and things like that. I've seen places where if you voted on election day, you get, something free at a restaurant. And imagine doing that for cricket in a community which is relatively new to cricket. If you watch the game, if you have tickets, you show the tickets, you get something at a discounted price. That helps both the community and the sport. So there's a lot of scope for that. And the big investment in the land that you mentioned, recovering that becomes a lot easier when the environment around it becomes a lot more holistic.
That's right, yeah. And again, ultimately it comes down to exposure of sport. It's like, okay, we're going to the cricket ground today to have a fun day out. The kids have got something to do. There's a gym, there's a cafe, there's this, that, and the other. Oh yeah, and that's right. The cricket, like the local cricket game is going to be played at night. We may as well stick around. Then the kids start to see cricket. Right. It's more in their face, right? So It's something that I think about a lot. Again, how do we grow and scale the game? There is an element of look, touch, feel to it. And in many of these emerging members, like cricket grounds, if there's even any at all, or they're just a long way away from anything, and that's not going to move the needle. So we have to kind of rethink what this looks like.
Absolutely. The next thing I wanted to chat with you about was just sort of where do you see cricket is going? And obviously the next T20 World Cup is coming up. It's really not that far away. We have 20 teams here, which is obviously a big positive. Cricket is going to be, as you mentioned, in the Olympics next time, LA 2028. The ODI World Cup, however, continues to be 10 teams. And Test cricket, surprisingly, or I mean, maybe it's not surprising, but for somebody like you who's been running the game, but unfortunately has been, more or less the longer series are limited to the three major nations, Australia, England, and India. Where do you see cricket heading in terms of just, the growth of the game? And also, how do you think, having been in the ICC, how do you think they're handling things today?
Yeah, so look, three formats is great, but it's also a challenge. And one of my first two articles really was, I think the first one was cricket is everywhere, but what does it mean? There's just so much cricket on. I struggle as a cricket fan to know what's going on. There's, even like at the start around January or December, there was, I think, the Bangladesh Premier League, the BBL, the SAT20, and the ILT20, right? All on the same time. So as a cricket fan, let alone anyone else who's just done pick the game up to understand kind of what this all means. So I think, and then the second article I wrote was around cricket needs a calendar, not just a schedule. And the World Cricket Association developed a really interesting paper last year around providing think about windows, international cricket window, World Cup window, franchise league cricket window, and then even and what I threw in there was kind of like an innovation sandbox window where you're playing around some formats or you're doing some other things. Like there's 1,000 different ways you could cut it, but the reality is players are burnt out, fans are kind of going who's playing when, and 1 week they're playing with this teammate, the next week they're playing against them in another league, right? Let alone all the issues with corruption and T10s and things like that. Like, it's a real challenge. ICC's got a challenge on their hands. Despite that, cricket continues to grow. So I think if we can look at making a better sense of the calendar and providing a scarcity value, which is really that's why the NFL is so valuable. I would also argue that's why the IPL is also valuable, because it only runs a couple of months of the year. And it's got a real scarcity value to it as well, and that's why the per game numbers are so big. So there's a real balance that needs to happen around that. And the reality is that the ICC probably needs to step in and do something about that at some point. Although I used to work for many people there, and I've got some sympathy or some empathy for them around how they go about that, because ultimately the members who are the ICC need to make money, so they need to do their own domestic leagues as well. So, challenge. To the three formats, I mean, I think everyone's got their own take on it. My take is T20's been incredible. Again, for associates, like the fact there's a 20-team World Cup coming up. Italy are playing in it. Scotland just got put back in. Uganda was in it last time. The USA beat Pakistan is super over. I mean, incredible. It really is. And it does expand the game. So I'm a big proponent of T20 from a global sense. I'll take Test match cricket next. I mean, that's the one that I really only care about, to be quite frank. But it is only big in those three countries. How do you incentivize the other members to put more effort into it? I think it does come back to windows and scarcity on that kind of thing. Will they do the two tiers? that's interesting because at least you got some jeopardy and some scarcity there about like, who's going to be relegated, who's going to come up. I think that would create some interest, but again, that's politically sensitive because no one wants to be in tier two. God forbid if India, Australia, or England dropped into tier two at some point. And then the ODIs are the really, that's the real challenging one for me. I mean, I grew up in World Series cricket, and still, I still like it, but does it have a place? I'm really not sure. I struggle to see it. Again, if we're talking, let's go back to the calendar and the meaning problem. If you take out bilateral ODI cricket, that will ease a lot of pressure on it, right? But then how does kind of the World Cup into that? Because that is a historical institution. I was in India for the 23 World Cup, and it was a great event. But if you take that away, what's the pathway for it? How do you qualify? And then you've got, of course, Champions Trophy as well, which another 50-over competition. So all of them have their space right now. On Test cricket, please don't go anywhere. I want you to stay forever. T20 cricket, great for associates. 50-over side of things. I think that needs real discussion because that's where it can provide that breathing room, that space, that scarcity value. Then I don't think we want to necessarily lose what the 50-over World Cup means to a lot of people, let alone kind of the revenues that it brings into the game. So I know I didn't really answer the question, but those are just some thoughts that I keep thinking about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is definitely a tough one, and yeah, it's unclear where the ICC stands on some of this as well, because the Champions Trophy, as you mentioned, has come back, and so it seems like they're trying to reignite the ODI game, but is that going to be enough? We don't know. I think the other piece about Test cricket, to your point, that's the format I care the most about as well. And I think the one piece that I feel has been missing, I totally understand the challenges or the costs of holding a 4-day game or 5-day game, and that's substantially more than a T20. So I get all of the logistical challenges around it, but I think the piece that I feel is missing the most is the pathway. Somebody like Ireland or Scotland or Afghanistan, if they're doing really well, in Afghanistan's case, yes, they've become a test side. But what happens to the next Afghanistan if Nepal are pushing and showing that they have the talent? There's really no pathway anymore for test status. It seems pretty arbitrary, and that I think is the piece that's probably the most demoralizing. Because I think if that was well thought out and well planned, then maybe a two-tier cricket structure for test cricket could work. But I think that it's like 12 teams that play, out of which the bottom 3 barely play. So which is why having 2 tiers is extremely risky, because then you have a chance of 7, 8, 9 also slipping away, barely playing any cricket.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we did when I was at the ICC, the other thing I was doing with World Cricket League was also the Intercontinental Cup, which was a 4-day competition with top associates. And that's kind of, fallen off the radar, right? I think, look, yeah, there's been a lot of discussion about it, a lot of people talking about it. I mean, I've thought about this too. Is there a way that you can kind of meld the kind of 3 formats into one? For example, like you got your the T20 expansion, the Ugandans and the Italys of this world, T20. They perform at a certain level. If you hit a certain level in the World T20 World Cup, you get into a kind of 50-over World Cup because you've shown that you're of good quality. Then 50-over World Cup, the top however many get into the kind of World Test Championship series, whether that's 1 or 2. So, and then you, again, with sport, you need jeopardy and you need a narrative in order for it to be of interest and to be long-term successful. So if you've got some kind of journey there, right, where you come up through the regional qualifiers, into the T20 World Cup, into the ODI World Cup, and yes, they're different formats, different skills, appreciate that, but at least there's a kind of pathway there. And also, from a fan, you understand. Like it's just like Wrexham coming up from the 3rd division to the Championship and maybe the Premier League, right? And that's a story you can hang your hat on. right? Cricket doesn't really have that story. It's like, so why are these guys playing now? Oh, it's because they decided to hold this Test series or decided to hold a 3-match ODI. But why? Just because there was a space in the calendar. What does it mean? They might get some points and they go up. It's just there's no narrative there, And again, as a fan who understands it, I get it. As a fan like Alicia, like okay, how does cricket work? What's the story there? There isn't really one. It's arbitrary. It's not attractive.
Absolutely. Well, the only other question I'll ask you, Eddie, before I let you go is, what do you think because you're so focused on associates, what do you think the health of the associate game is? Keeping aside Test cricket, just how the associate game is today versus 10 years ago, and what do you hope it'll be in 2035 when we talk again?
The resilience of associate cricket is still astonishing to me. I mean, these boards, they live hand to mouth pretty much all the time, right? And it goes to show the passion of the game, and they've succeeded in spite of that, those economic realities. And again, you can only go, or you can go mainly with on-field performances, and the fact that there's a regular beatings. So Nepal beat West Indies, they won the first 2 games recently last year. Namibia beat South Africa. I mean, like these countries could easily just roll over and say, we'll just play in like our local internal competition. No, they are talented, they're committed, and like with Namibia, they've built a stadium by themselves. Yeah, ICC put some money in because they're going to host the World Cup, and most of that money was coming from corporates and Namibia cricket going and rolling their sleeves up and getting it done. So the resilience pretty much all associates have shown, if not all of them, is incredible. And then you have the women's game into that as well. Like so you look at kind of Thailand and Rwanda and these kind of ones. They go like the women's cricket game is strong in quite a lot of these countries. So the fact that the associate cricket is still going strong both on field and off field, despite the challenges they've had, is great because it shows that kind of anti-fragile nature of the associate game. And that's why I'm so, and to the future, that's why I'm so and a believer in, if we can get some of these economics right, and if we can attract outside capital to get money, whether it's wealthy diaspora, whether it's governments, Olympic funding, if we can get some outside capital to supplement what the ICC does, then a lot of associate cricket, I like calling it emerging market cricket. Emerging market cricket can be huge. Like I really believe that, and that could be let's say 10 years time, a 36-team World Cup or 30-team World Cup, where we're no longer that really surprised that Namibia's beating South Africa or Nepal's beating West Indies just because what it is. You've got high quality facilities in many nations. You've got governments who are backing it. You've got institutions and outside capital who are investing because they see the return, that they see returns coming to them because of the growth of the game. That's what I'd like to see in 15 years, and I think it can happen because again the base is there, despite all the challenges associated cricket faced over the years. It's still there, and it's still going strong, and people are still talking about and interested in it. So I'm pretty positive on the future. In fact, I'm very positive, and hopefully some of my writing, some of the people I'm talking to can help us get there.
Awesome. I appreciate that perspective, and on that note of positivity, I think we'll end the podcast. Eddie, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you and getting your thoughts. We look forward to having you again. Hopefully we'll get a chance to talk more about US cricket, which you know a lot about as well. I look forward to connecting again.
Thanks, Mayank. Really appreciate it. It's great questions, and let's go associate cricket.